I'm no tech genius, but I knew if I wanted my business to crush it, I needed a website now. Thankfully, Bluehost made it easy. I customized, optimized, and monetized everything exactly how I wanted with AI. In minutes, my site was up. I couldn't believe it. The search engine tools even helped me get more site visitors. Whatever your passion project is, you can set it up with Bluehost. With their 30-day money-back guarantee, what have you got to lose? Head to Bluehost.com to start now.
Long gone are the days of waiting to be seen in a doctor's office only to have that awkward conversation with your healthcare provider. Wisp gives you access to sexual and reproductive healthcare from the comfort of your home. Get treatment for BV, yeast infections, UTIs, and much more delivered directly to your home or ready for pickup at your local pharmacy in less than 3 hours. The best part? Wisp is discreet, convenient, and you don't need medical insurance to receive care or prescription medication. Visit us today at hellowisp.com.
Welcome back to another episode of Investies. I'm your host, Linda Garcia. This week on the podcast, we are going to take a quick look at what took place in the market last week and what we should expect in the weeks ahead. Investies, before I get into last week's market update, I want to talk to you a little bit about what took place for me at the Texas Capitol last week. It was an extremely heavy lift, and I think it's important that I communicate what I'm taking on over there because as I moved through the process this week, I did see how it can potentially impact this podcast and how I communicate with you all on a week-to-week basis, most especially when there is so much taking place in the news cycle for the stock market, the economy, and of course, the Trump administration. All of this impacting the way the market is moving. As I communicated last week, it is so important for me to provide support for our newer investors. But one of the things that I discovered last week through this volatility is that our older investors are also needing some type of emotional support or contact with other investors to be able to talk through what is happening in the market. However, this morning I did wake up completely depleted. And I had to come to the realization that perhaps as we move through session and the pressure gets heavier and the learning curve gets bigger, that perhaps I'm not going to be able to show up in the same capacity that I have been showing up. I do not know yet, and sometimes it just feels better to put my thoughts out there instead of holding on to them. Last week at the Texas Capitol, I laid out my very first bill, which was something that was extremely exciting. If you're not following my journey over at Instagram, the handle is at Linda4 Texas. Please follow. There's so many exciting things that are going on. And then also we had budget day on Thursday. On a high level, budget day is when we vote on amendments in the budget, and we also vote on the budget itself. We left the Capitol at about 3:45 in the morning. I didn't get to my apartment until 4 in the morning, and it was one of the first long nights of many. This is just a glimpse of what I'm going to be moving into, not just one day a week, but 5, sometimes potentially 7 days a week with no rest day. And so it was a big moment of reality for me. We get told what our schedule is going to look like, but we don't know what that is actually like until we are moving through it. I do find it important to keep you all up to date and let you know what is taking place behind the scenes at the Capitol. Also, so you all can just give me some grace like that moment there. That was my son that just walked into my studio that knows not to walk in. But today's his birthday. Right, Benny? Today's your birthday, yes. And here I am trying to get this out on his birthday.
This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV, it's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
You're the owner of a small business, which means you're also the tech guy, and HR, and personal assistant, and head honcho, and intern. You could use another pair of hands, like the experts you'll find at Verizon Small Business Days, April 21st through 27th. Get a free tech check, special deals, and more. Call 1-800-483-4428 or visit verizon.com/smallbusiness to book your appointment. Verizon Business.
Let's go ahead and get into what took place in the stock market last week. In the last episode of Investies podcast, I mentioned that we were for sure going to see a crash. This wasn't me predicting anything. We were only 3 points away from hitting that crash. And with all of the news that had been released over the weekend, it was going to be very easy for us to reach that crash. We, in fact, did during intraday trading. But because we closed at a higher level, we saw a reversal there. We didn't have a crash that was recorded. I want to make sure that we all understand this. First, I want you to understand what intraday trading is. Intraday trading is any trades that are taking place during traditional market hours. Traditional market hours are 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Anything that takes place during those hours is called intraday. While the stock market did crash during intraday trading, it will not count if at the close of the market there is some sort of reversal. And we saw just that. So shortly after the market goes past a 20% decrease from its all-time high, there is a rumor that is released that says that Trump is going to pause tariffs for 90 days. And we saw an immediate jump in the market. Trump then lets us know that this is, in fact, fake news. The market sees a little bit of a decline shortly after that statement, but it never reaches that low. We've talked about market manipulation in the past, specifically market manipulation tied to Trump. We are seeing so much market manipulation. It is really crazy for me to not see the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, step in and enforce regulation the way we normally do. I mean, I guess it's no surprise that Trump is getting a pass on this, but it is just wild for me to witness in real time. Via Truth Social, Trump says, "This is a great time to buy," in all caps, and signs off with DJT. DJT is also the ticker symbol for his media company. And what happens next is truly no surprise. Ticker symbol DJT increases by 8%. But the leader is the S&P 500 increasing by 9.5% during intraday trading. Just as a reminder, on average, we can expect for the S&P 500 to increase anywhere from 8 to 10% a year. We watched that level of increase happen in a matter of minutes. This is called market manipulation, and it doesn't end there. This man has the audacity the audacity to start to brag about how much his friends made off of the market manipulation. Towards the end of the week, that rumor that was supposedly fake news, the one where he's going to push out tariffs for 90 days, becomes reality. He comes out and says that he's going to push out tariffs for 90 days, and then we see a much more sustainable recovery in the market. We are currently up 8.21% from that all-time low that we hit on Monday when we crashed. As of this morning on April 12th, Trump announces that phones, computers, and chips will be exempt from these new tariffs. This is going to have a relatively positive impact on the market come Monday, specifically the NASDAQ. We should see a really nice liftoff. We cannot forget that Trump is still kicking the tariff can down the road. And now with him saying that phones and chips and computers will be exempt, I feel like no one is taking him seriously. At the beginning, I feel like no one knew to take him seriously because he tends to over-exaggerate impact and then retracts. We're seeing this happen now, so it'll be interesting to see how the market begins to react. We should still expect for volatility to take place. We also, on Friday, had earnings kickoff, okay? So a new season of earnings began on Friday. We have the banks that report first. I have not looked at the earnings from the banks that reported on Friday. I appreciate your patience with this. I'm going to just wait until next week when they finish reporting so that I can get an assessment of how all of the banks are doing. I will come back next week and talk to you about that. It will be interesting to see how all of those reports from the banks impact the market and what the CEOs think of tariffs. Of course, with new news coming out specifically today, new perspectives are also developed. So I'm excited to see what the banks think of all of the changes that have taken place in just the last 3 days. I am currently not purchasing in the market. I am solely waiting. As soon as I see a recovery when we have so much turmoil and we are so close to a crash, I don't like to buy. I do like to buy as the market is crashing, but when I see a really quick rebound, I really like to wait. When I first saw the rebound on Monday, I swore that that was an institutional rebound. I thought that the banks were buying in. I really believed that big money was stepping into the market to try and save it from dropping any further. I was completely wrong. And to my shock, we found out from reports that came out that it was actually individual investors like you and I that have been conditioned in the last several years to buy the dip. I thought it was remarkable for retail investors to come in and save the market. It's going to be really interesting to see if these new patterns that have been developed in the last 5 years is going to change the way the market moves. It'll be interesting to see if we as retail investors are able to sustain the market. Based on the crash, though, I can tell you that we are still extremely emotional and we have weak hands. We have not heard diamond hands, I want to say, since 2020, maybe 2021. When I start to hear the term diamond hands again, I will start to believe in our emotional capacity to not capitulate when shit starts hitting the fan. Diamond hands was a really popular 2020 term that began to meme, basically just advising people to hold on no matter what. We saw the height of the term diamond hand used during the GameStop and the AMC saga. I don't anticipate a crazy drop this week unless we receive some crazy news. Given the news that we just heard on Saturday, today, this morning, I do anticipate some recovery at the beginning of the week. Let's see how all of this plays out. The next 90 days may be somewhat a relief, similarly to what we saw right before April 2nd, when the tariffs were supposed to hit. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Investies. Be sure to check out my Instagram account at Lose Warrior. Also check out Investies' Instagram account at Investies Podcast. Last week on Monday, when the market was crashing, I did offer some support. I created a live. I wanted to make sure that I was communicating to folks what was taking place. You heard what my concerns were in last week's episode, and I wanted to make sure that I was helping to sort of mitigate any emotional feelings that we were going through and avoid folks selling out of the market. You saw the quick rebound. This is why it is so important to stay cool, calm, and collected. Follow us on Instagram. Also, if you haven't already, I would like to ask you to please head over to Apple Podcasts, rate and review Investies. This really helps spread the word on what is taking place on Investies. It costs nothing, but it does take about 5 minutes of your time. If that, please head over there, rate and review us. You're listening to Investies, a Cosmic Standard and In Luz We Trust production. Special thank you to the team, Asia Simpson, Eliza Smith, and Jacob Winnick.
I don't know what burn pits exposed me to, but I know that under the PACT Act, I now have VA care, and I get the disability benefits I need to keep going. VA is keeping its promise to veterans. Get what you earned. Visit choose.va.gov.
Not all veterans are eligible for the type or amount of benefits mentioned here.